At lunch, my parents called me a burden and said I'd ruined their lives, mocked me for paying rent, then laughed as I walked out. A week later, their bills went unpaid, their phones were cut, and they showed up at my job begging me to fix it. Hey Reddit! My parents treated me like their personal backup plan while worshiping my sister like she walked on clouds. One day I finally said screw it, packed my stuff, and built my own life. Thought that would be the end of it. Yeah, no. They weren't ready to let go. Let me start from the beginning. My name's Nate, I'm 26 and I work in tech support. Nothing glamorous, just enough to pay my bills and apparently half of my parents too. I've been renting a room in my parents' house for years, covering their car payment, family phone plan, insurance, and even groceries when things came up. Not because I'm some hero, just because they kept saying they needed help. That's the dynamic. I handle things. They pretend I don't. So when I came back to the house for the holiday lunch, I planned to eat, be civil, and leave early. That's it. No big expectations. I walked in, nodded at whoever looked my way, and headed to the kitchen. The house was loud immediately. Out. Valerie, my mom, was banging pans around like she was mad at the stove. Graham, my dad, sitting in the living room. People were squeezed onto couches. Uncle Dean was already in lecture mode, saying stuff like, "Kids these days don't appreciate structure." Aunt Marisol hovered with her phone, like she was waiting for fresh gossip to fall into her hands. Cousin Jace was trying to sound smart about some political thing he clearly read in one headline and didn't understand. I kept it simple. Hey, grabbed a plate. Sat down at the table because it was the only place not packed. I'd been there maybe 5 minutes when Valerie slid into the seat across from me. She looked me over like I was a countertop that needed polishing. "So," she said loudly, "still renting that room, I see. Maybe this year you'll finally get on your feet enough to, I don't know, contribute more?" I paused mid-bite. I've been contributing plenty. Dry tone, no heat, just the facts. She waved her hand like I told a joke. "Oh, Nate, you know what I mean. Real help, not just the little things. The little things. Car payment, phone plan, insurance, sure, tiny stuff." I gave her a half smile, the kind that says I'm not doing this today. I'll keep that in mind. She didn't take the hint. Tessa helps more, and she doesn't even live here half the time. I looked over. Tessa, my sister, was scrolling on her phone, pretending not to hear any of it. Of course. Before I could steer away, Graham came around the corner with a plate and the voice of someone who thinks volume equals authority. "Valerie's right," he said, sitting down. "We're carrying way too much because of you, Nate. You're 26. Your sister's younger and easier. Responsible. You, on the other hand." He shook his head like I was a math problem he couldn't solve. "I pay the car, and the phone plan, and the insurance." I didn't raise my voice. I just listed facts. Graham snorted. "We never asked you to. You offered because you felt guilty about stressing us out. And now you want credit for it? Come on." Classic gaslighting. Rewrite history and hope no one calls it out. I stared at him. Right. Guilty? That's what it was. Dry as dust. Short. Controlled. That should have been the end. But Uncle Dean heard the tension and marched over like some bootleg philosopher. "Now, boys," he said, hands up like he was breaking up a fight that didn't exist. "Family's all you got. You only get one mother and father. Be grateful they're guiding you." He had no idea what was going on. Didn't care either. He just wanted to sound wise. Cousin Jace leaned in, helpful as a scratched CD. "I mean," he said, shrugging, "maybe they're just saying it out of love. Tough love, you know?" I stared at him for half a second. "Yeah, that's what this looks like." He nodded, missing the sarcasm completely. Across the room, Aunt Marisol whispered to someone, eyes wide like she was front row at a show. She wasn't going to stop this. She was recording it in her head for later group chats. Valerie kept going, poking like it was her hobby. "We're only trying to get you to do better, Nate. Don't get defensive." Graham chimed in. "Exactly. We tell you the truth and you run from it. That's the problem. You always run." I set my fork down. Slow. Quiet. This wasn't frustration. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was them enjoying the moment, treating me like a public project they could diagnose in front of everyone. I pushed my chair back and stood up. Calm. No shaking hands. No flushed face. I looked at Graham, then Valerie. "You know," I said, voice steady, "if this is how you talk about the person keeping your house running, you might want to rethink your audience." Dry, clean. Not a yell, just a line delivered straight. Then I walked out. No plate, no coat, nothing. Just me leaving their house the same way I'd been planning since the day I turned 18. I didn't hear anyone follow. Didn't look back. I didn't need a scene. They made enough noise for all of us. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked straight to my car, got in, and didn't even turn on the radio. I drove a few blocks before the anger finally started pushing through the calm I'd been holding onto. Not yelling anger, just that tight, cold kind that settles in your chest. I wasn't shocked about what happened. If anything, it felt like the exact thing they'd eventually do. I'd been waiting for it in the back of my mind for years. I just didn't expect them to pick a holiday lunch to perform it. I didn't want to go to a hotel. Didn't want to call anyone for a pep talk. I just wanted distance. I ended up parking behind a closed strip mall, leaned my seat back, and stayed there. It wasn't comfortable, but it was quiet. And quiet was all I needed. I slept in the car. I thought about how predictable it all was. Graham had been calling me difficult since middle school. If I didn't answer a text fast enough, I was disrespectful. If something broke in the house, it somehow turned into a conversation about my choices. Valerie did the same thing, just softer. She'd say stuff like, "We just worry because you're never as stable as Tessa." Meanwhile, they leaned on my paycheck whenever it suited them. I remembered the first time they asked me to cover the car payment. Graham said, "It's temporary. You're the one who uses the car most anyway." I barely drove it. Tessa used it way more, but I paid it. Then the phone plan. Then the insurance. Just until we catch up, they said. They never caught up. They just expected me to keep filling the gaps. And Tessa? She floated through everything. She could forget chores, drop a class, lose a job, and they treated her like she was still made of glass. They praised her for doing the bare minimum while acting like I was one step away from ruining their lives. She played along because it got her softness, money, and zero responsibility. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Cleanly done. I went back to grab my stuff before they were around. When I pulled up, no one was home. Good. I moved fast. Documents, clothes, laptop, the tools, carried the boxes out, and drove off. It felt like finishing a job. Driving away this time didn't feel rushed or angry. It felt clean, like clocking out. I headed straight to the studio apartment I found last month. I had signed the lease a few weeks ago and then stalled, keeping the key buried in my bag while I second-guessed everything. I kept thinking, what if they get mad? Now I realized how useless that was. They were always mad. They just hid it until it benefited them to show it. The studio wasn't fancy. First floor, thin walls, old heater. The windows rattled when trucks went by. I turned the key and stepped into a space that was mine. I set my bags down on the floor and stood there for a second. No noise, no footsteps, no one calling my name like an alarm. I opened the blinds to let some light in. The place was empty except for a basic bed frame and a small table the landlord left behind. I put my stuff down, made the bed with a cheap new sheet set I'd picked up, and unpacked a few essentials. I plugged in my charger. I connected to the Wi-Fi I paid for. Mine. Only mine. It wasn't impressive, but it felt like fresh air. For the first time in my entire life, their voices weren't in the next room. They didn't know what I was doing, where I was sitting, what I was paying for. And standing there in that quiet, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not dramatic, not life-changing. Just steady, simple peace. The kind you notice because you never had it before. For the first week in my new place, I didn't make a single move toward Graham or Valerie. No calls, no texts, nothing. I didn't block them, I just let the silence sit. If they wanted to replay what happened at lunch, they could do it without my help. The first day, Valerie started her routine. Text 1. Let me know you got home safe. I'm still your mother. Text 2. We shouldn't have argued. You know how emotional holidays get. Text 3. You walking out like that was dramatic, Nathan. She was already switching tones like she always did. Soft, then sharp, then wounded. I didn't reply. She hated being ignored more than anything, and that alone was enough reason to stay quiet. By day 2, she escalated. You can't keep running from your responsibilities. You owe us a conversation. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us? Every message made it clearer she wasn't upset about the disrespect. They didn't even acknowledge what they said. So, she was upset the dynamic shifted. A boundary she wasn't expecting finally hit her. Graham didn't message until late that night. His first text looked exactly how I expected. Grow up. Short. Blunt. Like he thought that settled something. Then he followed it up an hour later with, if you want to talk like adults, I'm here. No need for theatrics. The man insulted me in front of half the family and was now acting like I caused a scene by walking out. Classic Graham. Start the fire, then pretend you're the one offering the extinguisher. The next morning he sent another text. We're not mad. Let's just reset and move forward. Reset what? I didn't answer. He always tried the nothing happened approach when he knew he crossed a line. I wasn't entertaining that anymore. Uncle Dean chimed in around midweek with a long message about respecting your elders and how family stands together, even when things get tough. He used phrases like he was writing a fortune cookie. I didn't even open the rest. I just read the first 2 lines and swiped it away. He wasn't asking what happened. He was lecturing me to get back in line. Not happening. During that whole week, Tessa didn't message me once, which honestly made sense. She wasn't going to risk losing her spot as the golden child unless she absolutely needed to. She'd stay silent until the situation looked safe for her to speak. That was her pattern. I focused on settling into the studio. Work, furniture basics, meal prep, regular stuff. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional. Just building a routine without having to anticipate someone else's mood. Every night felt like a reset button I'd never had before. Around day 5, I checked my banking app and saw the upcoming payments for the bills I'd been covering. Seeing them sitting there almost annoyed me. It reminded me how much I'd been carrying without thinking. Not because I loved doing it, but because they convinced me it was temporary every single time. It wasn't temporary. It was convenient for them. So I stopped them. Car payment, canceled, family phone plan, removed my card, insurance autopay, disabled, anything tied to my name or card, done. I didn't send a warning. Didn't send a, since you don't respect me, I'm not paying. Nothing. I just removed myself from the entire setup. If they wanted to call me a burden, then fine. Burdens don't carry entire households. They could pay their own bills, the same way every adult does. It felt good doing it quietly. No speeches, no, look at me being strong. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just done letting them drain my energy, time, and money while still talking to me like I was some long-term disappointment. Valerie kept sending messages every day. Some short, some paragraphs. She tried every angle she could think of. Motherly concern, guilt, irritation, outright disrespect. I answered none of it. Graham sent one more text on day 6. Enough games. Call me. I looked at the message, locked my phone, and didn't think about it again. By the end of the week, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt clean, peaceful. They'd gotten used to me reacting to everything. Now they were talking into an empty hallway, and the echo was probably driving them insane. I knew the moment the first bill bounced, they'd erupt. I knew the text would go from annoying to frantic. And honestly, I didn't feel bad about it. I wasn't scared of the fallout anymore. They depended on me way more than I ever depended on them. And for the first time, they were about to feel the weight of that. I went to sleep that 7th night knowing the silence wouldn't last much longer. They were going to notice. And I was completely fine with that. The silence broke the morning the car payment bounced. I was getting ready for work when my phone lit up with a call from Graham. I didn't answer. 30 seconds later, he called again. And again. Then the text started. Call me now. What did you do? This isn't funny. I already knew what happened. I checked my email and there it was. An automated notice from the bank confirming the cancellation had processed. Right behind it came another. The family phone plan autopay failed. The carrier suspended cellular service, not the phones. On Wi-Fi they could still message me, which is why the texts kept coming. 2 hits, back to back, and they felt both. Valerie was the next to blow up my phone. First message, our phones aren't working. Fix this. Then immediately after, you can't just cut things off without talking to us. Like I owed them an exit interview for my own money. I ignored all of it on my way out the door. By lunchtime, the meltdown was in full swing. I stepped outside to get some air and saw 8 missed calls from Graham. Then another one came in while I was scrolling. I answered that one just to get it over with. He started yelling instantly. No greeting. Do you have any idea what you've done? You ruined the whole account. We can't even drive the car until we get this sorted. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? No, I said, voice steady. This is how I stop paying for adults who disrespect me. He didn't like that. He went straight into rewriting the entire situation. We never needed your help in the first place. You insisted on paying. Now you're acting like we depended on you. I cut him off quietly. I wasn't raising my voice. You called me a burden. Burdens don't pay car notes. There was a second of stunned silence. The kind where someone realizes they're not getting the reaction they practiced. Then he blew up again. You're unbelievable. You're tearing this family apart. I didn't respond. I hung up mid-rant. Nothing dramatic, no speech. Just disconnected and put my phone back in my pocket. 2 minutes later, Valerie started her wave of boundary-pushing texts. You can't treat your mother like this. Turn the phones back on. Don't ignore me. I know you're reading these. We raised you. You don't abandon the people who gave you everything. What do you everything? I paid half their bills and rent for a room in their house. They didn't give me anything I wasn't already paying for. But trying to explain that to Valerie was like arguing with a smoke alarm. It would only get louder. I muted her after the 12th text. Tessa finally messaged me that afternoon. Not to take sides, just to protect her own position. They're losing it. I'm not getting in the middle. But like, what did you expect? Classic Tessa. Neutral until the dust settles. Not helpful, not harmful. Just floating in the safest lane possible. Aunt Marisol, meanwhile, was having the time of her life. She texted me updates like she was covering a live sporting event. Graham just threw his keys across the room. Valerie is saying you're punishing them. They're calling a family meeting tonight. This is wild. She didn't ask if I was okay. She wanted entertainment. She'd probably already told half the extended family. Cousin Jace joined in later. I saw his text and rolled my eyes before opening it. Look, man, I get both sides. They shouldn't yell, but maybe you shouldn't cut everything off at once. Maybe talk to them calmly? Jace always tried to be the balanced guy. Problem was, he had no idea what actually happened, and even less idea what he was talking about. I replied with one sentence. Not your situation. Stay out of it. He sent back a thumbs up emoji like he had just contributed something meaningful. The rest of the afternoon was quiet. Too quiet. I knew what that meant. They were regrouping. Valerie doesn't stop just because someone tells her no. She considers no a starting point, not an answer. I was making dinner when another call popped up. This time from the house number. Not Graham's cell. Not Valerie's cell. The landline. Old school panic. I let it ring out. Then the voicemail came in. Valerie's voice, frantic and angry. Nathan, this is ridiculous. Enough. You will call us back. You will fix this. We cannot deal with this right now. Do not ignore your family. I deleted it without listening to the rest. For a family that called me dead weight just days before, they seemed awfully dependent on the burden paying their bills. By the end of the night, I sat on the edge of my bed, phone muted, watching message after message pop in without feeling anything heavy. No guilt, no second thoughts, no urge to explain myself. Their panic wasn't coming from love. It wasn't about missing me. It was about losing the control and convenience I'd been providing for years. And now they had to handle their own lives. For once, that wasn't my problem. The fallout from the shut-off bills was still echoing when I finally heard from Tessa. Not in a dramatic, I'm on your side now way. More like someone walking carefully near a fire they don't want to get burned by. She texted me around mid-morning. Hey, just so you know, Dad's trying to figure out where you are. No greeting, no how are you. I'd straight information, which told me she wasn't doing this for me. She was doing it because things at the house were getting messy enough that she didn't want to get dragged into it. I asked what she meant. She replied almost instantly. He's been calling everyone. Anyone who might know something. Mom too. She's going through your old mail. She dumped a whole box onto the table. That part didn't surprise me. Valerie always went for personal info whenever she felt out of control. It was her way of pulling strings she had no right to touch. But hearing she was tearing through my old mail made my jaw clench. I'd cleaned out the important stuff, but apparently I'd left behind more than I realized. I asked Tessa, what is she looking for? Address stuff. Anything with a location. She keeps saying she has a right to know where her kids live. Kids. Not adults. Not individuals. Property. While I was reading her messages, my phone buzzed again. But not from Tessa. It was an alert from one of my apps saying, location services, shared with family group. Family group. I hadn't thought about that in years. I opened my account settings and there it was. My phone still connected to the family plan Graham had insisted on back when I first got a smartphone. He said it was simpler, and I didn't argue because I was a teenager, and it saved me paperwork. Now that simple setup was letting them see exactly where I was every time I moved. A leftover leash I didn't even know I still had on me. I texted Tessa immediately. When did they start checking my location? She hesitated before answering. Dad asked me last night if I saw you on the map. I said no. He checked himself and said something like, he can't hide forever. So they had been watching, or at least trying to. I felt a sharp, clean irritation. Nothing dramatic, just the kind you get when you find out someone's been in your space without permission. I didn't waste time. I left work on lunch break and drove straight to a phone store. I told the guy at the counter, I need my own plan. Today. He transferred my number, and within 15 minutes, I was off their carrier account. I got a notification that I'd been removed from the carrier's family group. Good. Porting a number doesn't touch Apple or Google family sharing. So I opened settings, left the cloud family group, turned off Find My and any location sharing to them, changed the payment info, and reset my cloud passwords. I wasn't leaving one crack open. By the time I finished, I felt more annoyed at myself than scared. I should have cut that cord ages ago. On the drive back to work, Tessa texted again. Mom keeps asking if you said anything to me. She wants your address. Another message popped in seconds later. She said you're being dramatic and she needs to check on you. Valerie always wrapped control in concern, like that made it softer. I texted back, and you told her, what? Tessa replied, I said you didn't tell me anything. At least she was keeping it simple. But then she added, she's going to ask again. She's not letting this go. I could practically hear Valerie pacing the kitchen, phone in hand, inventing reasons she deserved to know where I was. I typed one message back to Tessa. Short, firm, no anger. Don't give them anything. Play dumb. She didn't argue, didn't push back. She just texted back, yeah, I figured. That told me everything. She wasn't taking my side because she suddenly cared. She just didn't want the blowback hitting her. A few minutes later, Valerie tried to reach me through Tessa again. I saw the messages pop through one after another. Tell him we need the address. Tell him to stop hiding. If he wants to act like a child, we'll treat him like one. We can't fix anything if he keeps shutting us out. Tessa screenshotted all of them and sent them to me. I replied once more. Just ignore her. She didn't answer after that, probably worried Valerie would notice her helping me even a little. When I got home that evening, I locked the door behind me and put my phone on the counter. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. No tracking, no shared accounts, no one tracing my steps through some old plan I forgot existed. For the first time since I moved out, I felt like I was actually away from them, not just in a different building. Cutting off the bills was one thing. Cutting off their access to my life was another. And this time, I knew I'd severed the last wire they had wrapped around me. By the time everything with the phone plan was handled, things at home had gone quiet in that suspicious way, like the silence that comes before someone slams a door. I figured they were regrouping. I just didn't expect them to show up in person. It happened near closing time at work. I was shutting down my station when one of my coworkers walked over and said, "Hey man, there's some people outside asking for you." I stepped toward the front window, and there they were. Graham, Valerie, and Riley, my dad's buddy, who always acted like he was the head of some neighborhood committee no one asked for. They weren't even trying to be subtle. They stood in the middle of the parking lot like they were filming a confrontation for a reality show. Great. I walked outside, keeping the door propped open behind me so I could step back in fast if needed. Valerie spotted me first. She instantly went into full volume crying, the kind meant to cause a scene. "Nate, you can't keep doing this to us," she shouted, loud enough for people coming out of the grocery store next door to glance over. Graham took a step forward, trying to look like he was in charge. Jaw tight, shoulders squared, chest puffed. The second two customers nearby turned their heads. He softened immediately. "We're just worried about you," he said, switching tones on command. "Your mother hasn't slept in days." I kept my face blank. "You done?" Valerie gasped like I'd slapped her. Riley eyed me up and down with that look older guys give when they want to push someone around to feel important. He stepped closer, invading my space. "Look," he said, lowering his voice like he was about to guide me through a moral crisis. "This is family business. Don't make it messy. Man to man, just talk to them." I stared right at him. "Move back." He smirked like he thought I was bluffing. "You don't have to act tough, kid. Nobody's here to hurt you. Just..." I said move back. My voice wasn't raised. Not angry, just flat. And that threw him off more than if I'd yelled. Graham jumped in again, trying to hold the upper hand. "Don't talk to him like that. Riley's just trying to help." "Why is he even here?" I asked, looking right at Graham. "What does any of this have to do with him?" Even Riley didn't have an answer for that. He stood there with his arms crossed, trying to look intimidating and looking ridiculous instead. Valerie kept crying louder, grabbing at Graham's sleeve. "He's shutting us out. He thinks we're the problem. He won't even tell us where he lives." "Correct," I said. "I won't." She cried harder. People were definitely staring now. That was her goal, to make me fold because the situation was embarrassing. She'd always counted on me not wanting an audience. Not anymore. "Nathan," she cried, stepping closer. "Do you want your mother to have a breakdown in a parking lot? Is that what you want?" "That's your choice," I said. That stopped her cold. She wasn't used to me giving her responsibility for her own behavior. Graham tried a different tactic. "We didn't come here to fight," he said, voice soft again. "Just talk to us. We're your parents." I shook my head once. "No, not here." Riley puffed up again. "So you're just gonna walk away?" "Yeah," I said. "That's exactly what I'm gonna do." I turned around and walked back toward the building. Riley muttered something behind me about kids these days, trying to save face, but I didn't even look back. As I reached the door, I flagged down my manager, who had been hovering nearby, watching. "That's my family," I said quietly. "They're crossing lines. Can you call security? I need them off the property." He nodded without questioning me. They causing trouble? Already did. Our building security guard came over a few minutes later and approached them. I didn't hear everything, but I caught enough through the glass to know they weren't happy. Valerie tried to argue. Graham tried to act polite. Riley tried to puff up again. None of it mattered. Security told them clearly. They weren't allowed to wait around or block the entrance. They had to leave. Riley was the first to back off. He threw his hands up like he was too mature to argue and walked toward the car. Graham followed, grumbling. Valerie cried the whole way, dramatic enough to get one lingering glance from a stranger, but not enough to convince anyone she actually needed help. They drove off with the same energy they came with, loud, chaotic, entitled. When the lot finally cleared, my manager walked up beside me. Everything good? Yeah, I said. Better than it was. I finished closing up and headed home. The whole drive, I didn't feel shaken or guilty. I felt steady, focused. Like every move they made just confirmed why I left. Showing up at my job was a new level, though. A line-crossing one. And I wasn't stupid enough to wait for whatever stunt they'd pull next. By the time I walked through my apartment door, I already knew my next step. If they wanted to drag this into public spaces, into my workplace, into anything that threatened my stability, then I was done playing defense. I needed legal cover. Not tomorrow, not eventually. Now. That night, I booked a consult with a local attorney. By morning, we had a brief call. She told me to keep a log, stop engaging, and send a simple no-contact notice. I printed it, mailed it certified, and kept copies with my lease, bank records, and screenshots. She drafted a petition for a harassment order in case they escalated. I didn't even get a full week of quiet before they made their final move. It was a Thursday morning. I was making coffee when someone knocked on my apartment door. Slow, steady, official. Not Graham's angry pound, not Valerie's frantic tapping. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 police officers standing outside. I opened the door calmly. "Morning," one of them said. "Are you Nathan Hale?" "Yeah," I answered. "What's going on?" They told me they'd received a report from my parents. According to Graham and Valerie, I had abandoned the household, taken property that wasn't mine, and cut off essential services in a malicious way. They made it sound like I'd stolen a car and fled the state. I didn't react. I didn't panic. I just stepped back and said, "Come in. I already know what this is." The officers entered and stood near the table while I pulled out a folder I'd been building since leaving. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. They'd been escalating nonstop. This was the logical next step. I laid everything out cleanly. Bank records showing years of transfers to pay their bills. Screenshots of texts from Graham and Valerie admitting to what I'd covered. Proof of my move-out date, lease agreement, and updated address. Evidence of tracking attempts through the old family phone plan. And a short printed timeline of the last 2 weeks. Bullet-pointed, no extra commentary. The officers looked through everything quietly. One of them nodded at the paperwork. "You organized this ahead of time?" he asked. "Based on how things were going," I said. It wasn't hard to predict. They didn't smirk, but they didn't hide the fact that they understood exactly what kind of situation this was. Then they asked if I would call my parents, on speaker, so they could clarify a few points. I agreed. If they wanted to play games, they could do it with witnesses present. I dialed Graham. He answered immediately, probably because he thought the number meant he'd finally cornered me. "What do you want?" he snapped. One officer spoke. "Mr. Hale, this is Officer Daniels with the city police. We're with your son and following up on the report you filed." There was a pause, just long enough to hear panic creep in. "Oh, right. Yes." His voice suddenly softened, like he'd been rehearsing sympathy in the mirror. "We're just very worried. Our son has been unstable. We didn't want things to get out of hand. Gaslighting in real time." Officer Daniels said, "Your son has provided documentation that contradicts your statements. We'd like clarity." That cracked Graham's composure. "Well, things got misunderstood. The bills. He took things out of our name without permission. He was paying your bills personally," the officer said flatly. "We have records." Graham stuttered. "It wasn't like that. He offered. He owes us." There it was. The real reason behind everything. The officer didn't even entertain it. That is not a legal basis for a complaint. And making a false report is a serious issue. Before Graham could twist anything else, Valerie snatched the phone. "Nathan, why are you doing this? Bring them in, let me talk to them." Officer Daniels cut her off. "Ma'am, this is a formal inquiry. Please answer the questions asked." Valerie didn't listen. She never listened. She kept pushing. "He won't even tell us where he lives. We have the right to know where our child is." "He is an adult," the officer answered. "You have no such right. I almost felt the air get knocked out of her through the phone. She tried again, louder. He abandoned us. He won't pay the bills. He ruined everything. Ma'am, the officer repeated, tone firmer. None of that is criminal. You need to stop contacting him unless he initiates communication. Her voice cracked into that dramatic cry she used whenever she wanted sympathy. You don't understand? The officer hung up. Sir, he said to me, if they continue contacting you like this, you can file for a no-contact order. Based on what we've seen, you'd likely get it. They gave me a card, took one more look at the documents, and left with a simple, respectful nod. Door closed. Silence again. Not the kind from before, when everything felt like it was building towards something. This one was clean. Final. Of course, the family couldn't leave it alone. It took only an hour before Uncle Dean called. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail anyway. Nate, you need to fix this. Whatever happened, they're still your parents. Families work through these things. Be the bigger person? His entire message missed the point by a mile. No surprise there. Then Aunt Marisol texted me. OMG, what did you do? They're flipping out. Call me. I didn't bother opening the rest. She wanted a front row seat, not resolution. I sat down at my small table, opened my messages, found the thread with Graham and Valerie, and typed one final text. Don't contact me again. If you need something, do it through a lawyer. No explanation, no emotion, no anger, just a boundary. I hit send, locked my phone, and set it face down. I didn't feel triumphant, not victorious, just steady. No weight on my chest, no dread, no waiting for the next outburst. For the first time in years, everything was quiet, and it actually meant peace, not the calm before another storm. And this time, the quiet belonged to me. That's where the story ends. No contact, no guilt, just peace. But I know a lot of people deal with families like this, and it's never simple. How would you handle parents who use guilt as control? Do you think walking away is strength or avoidance? If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.